We're live. After just a bit of tech issues, what would be a tech-related event in the digital era without a tech challenge, right? My name is Ciprian Stanescu. I'm super excited to welcome all of you that are online now and that will join us later on in the recordings for a special event. It's a pre-release of a report that we're doing with one of the leading software companies of the world, UiPath. And we're looking at automation for good. Now, what is automation? A lot of us know what is good. Most of us think we know, but it's not that easy, actually. Now, what we do today is a lot to do about the future. So one of the things that I'm very excited to share with you is that we have people from around the world joining us. Also here in Bucharest with me at the UiPath office, we have Vladimir Deliu. We also have Ana Maria Ducek-Segesten from the AI Lund network, Ana Maria Stanco from Bucharest Robots, and Auro Giraud from l'Atelier Bene Paribas. I'm sorry if my French is pas parfait, but you never know. And later on, we talked with Margarita Mucibabic from UiPath, Ricardo Vinosa from KTH Royal Institute of Technology, and André Pietri from JEDI, the Joint European Disruptive Initiative. Now, what we do today, and if I could press next, I could actually show you, is we talk about a report that we're launching in October, in the fall, about automation for good. You can see on the screen the contents, and we do talk a lot about what is good, but also what automation for good is and how we can actually move forward in implementing technologies that are boosting social change. We looked in the report at how automation for good serves, if you like, our communities for living, so at individual level. What is the impact of automation on business communities and how we can work better, manufacture better, and also create sustainable investments, and the impact on the formal communities, be it the NGO world and in particular the government world. Now, what happens next is that my colleagues will briefly join me now. For 1 second, because I need a small device. This is like live television. I'm not sure if you've ever been on live television, but there's always something that doesn't really work at the first time. Just a bit about ourselves, Social Innovation Solutions. We're happy to support the development of an entrepreneurial ecosystem around Central and Eastern Europe through various incubators like Future Makers or Social Impact Award, but also our conversation platforms like Future Summit or Climate Change Summit happening in October. And we also help governments, companies to understand how they can use the future, how they can move forward and actually develop solutions for the future. Now, a couple of things from the report, just a teaser of what we launch in the next months. And the first item that I want to tackle on is food. Not just because I might be hungry, but also because food security is one of the biggest challenges of our generation, in particular this year with the Ukrainian crisis. Now, what automation can do, for example, is to influence farms, right? To have a better productivity and efficiency, to become more cost efficient and have a lesser, if you like, environmental damage. In the end, data-driven, automated precision farming can support this 60 to even 70% increase of food needs in the next 20 to 30 years. In the same time, in the report, we've looked at some of the most interesting solutions, be it from the private, individual, or public system. And just two examples for you. The first one is from Israel. It's Beehive. What they do, they have created the world's first autonomous beehive. And as you might know, bees are essential to the survival of our species in the end. They use computer vision, AI, and robotics to automate climate and humidity control, pest control, swarm prevention, and harvesting. There's another solution that we detail in the report. This is Blue River Technology. What they do is precision smart agriculture. For example, lettuce. I like lettuce. Maybe you like lettuce as well. They're using cameras, processors, and quarter-inch sprayers to automate the way lettuce grows and the way it grows better, not just faster. In the same time, it's not just about food. I'm not going to go obviously into the various challenges that we have at geopolitical level, but there is a bigger challenge that we all live in, and that is about climate. Now, the biggest challenge that there's a lot of challenges in climate, and one of the biggest ones is related to production, but also to agriculture. What automation and AI can do for climate is to, for example, when we talk about circular economy, to adopt most circular manufacturing solutions at various levels, to design circular components and materials, to create systems for intelligent sorting and classifying waste, for example. Now, there's two examples that I'm going to give to you from the report. The first one is Matic, or Marimatic. This is very relevant to most of us around the world, especially when we talk about waste management. Municipal solid waste management, a system that transports at high speeds through underground pipes in a fully automated system around 40 countries at global level. How do we take our waste from one place to the other, and how do we do that sustainably? And automation can do that. And one example from the more municipal or public system is the city of Sønderborg in Denmark, which has created a new way of reducing energy emissions and energy waste. About 600 flats in this relatively small city have been equipped with a predictive control model that uses automation to allow an artificial intelligence to reduce energy bills, enable buildings to act as energy batteries, and in the end, reduce energy efficiency across the city. There's more than we can choose sometimes about automation, so that's why in the report you can also find several trends related to automation and AI. The one that we see coming up faster and faster is what we call democratization of automation. There's more and more usage or use cases for automation that support more people to use it. As we're going through a climate crisis, circular design and remanufacturing, especially on and related to the chip, the chip crisis around the world is a big trend for the next years. Micro-automated production capacities are also highly important, and at the same time more and more present. And one that I really enjoy and I really like is automation-centric cultures. You might have heard of the Woke Corporation. These are companies where automation is used not just to become more efficient and to produce more, but also to have a better and more equipped workforce for the challenges of the future that are also not always related to technology. In the end, and closing with my last slide, if you like, for the day, I think automation is, when we talk about automation for good, ultimately this is about people. And this is the first topic of the panel that we have now. We're super excited to be joined live from many countries, and we have a session on how automation can help organizations nurture a people-first culture. I'm very excited to have with us people from around the world, as I was telling you. I'm going to go to my seat now and actually have a first interaction with Vladimir from UiPath. So You can see me, and I think you can see me again now. We have with us, as I was telling you, three amazing people as well, besides Vladimir. We have Anna Maria Ducek from AI Lund Network, Anna Maria Stancu from Bucharest Robots, and Aurore Giraud, L'Atelier BNP Paribas. Now, we talk a lot about automation, and I'm going to start with you and then go online. And one of the things that happens when we talk about automation in the past years is the classical automation comes and steal our jobs. And we see that a lot. We don't see that much maybe in the past years. But there is, I think, a need, not just about automation, but other technologies as well, to see how we can change the narrative, if you like, and how we can create organizations that use technology for the people, not against the people. So how, first and a short question is, how do we change the narrative related to this?
Well, first, thanks for having me. And I must say I'm the less amazing person from this panel. I'm very honored to be surrounded, even if it's on a global scale and virtually. I'm very happy to be part of this panel. So I'm part of the learning group, and here is where we focus on automation skills. But before investing in automation skills, we have to invest in raising awareness on how people are getting impacted by automation, and whether they want it or not, it's here to stay. But this brings only opportunities for them, in the sense that they can become happier at the job, they can find a purpose, they can get rid of the things they don't want to do. And what's more important, to challenge the world as it is. Even though we speak about students or existing employees, I think having this mindset in which they challenge the world as they know it and make it better through automation skills and AI and all these technologies who are disrupting our world, it's something that we can focus on. And we see more and more customers and partners of ours who are taking this awareness approach as one of their core strategies to evangelize automation inside the company and create these communities of automation and AI enthusiasts.
Yeah, you talked about community, and I must go to that.
Okay.
Sometimes technology seems to push us away from people. Do you see, and this is this is a challenging question maybe, how can technology and in particular automation bring people better together within organizations, communities, countries even?
Well, I think what automation can bring is more time for people to find mutual values or mutual purposes. And having time to focus on the purpose that you find or the purpose that you want to build brings you along with other colleagues with whom maybe you did not have time in the past to speak with. Or there were too many mundane tasks that frustrated you and you did not find the opportunity or the mindset to connect with other people. And as we've observed, community-based learning is the one that's most successful. So people who find themselves in the same challenges, they connect with their peers, whether it's from different departments, and this is how we see automation brings people together to get excited and build innovative solutions.
Yeah, I would go to the panel, let's say,
Okay.
to the other three business leaders and experts that are joining us. So I would actually start with I'm not going to say which Ana Maria because we have two, but I'm going to start with Ana Maria Stanco. We talked about people. But in the same time, you work a lot with robots, right? How do you see automation and AI not just as a tool to do stuff, but also as a tool to learn how we can be better people included? So I'm not sure if you are muted still or not. But
Theoretically, you should hear me.
Lovely. Yeah, we can.
Okay. Before I answer your question, I just want to say something regarding what you talked previously with Vladimir. While we are working a lot with robots, I can tell you that robots cannot take all our tasks. because while you have problems with your phone and sometimes it gets stuck, with hardware, it's even worse. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I mean, that was,
Okay.
yeah, we can.
Okay, so it's a lot difficult with hardware. So basically, robots can do stuff, but not all of the stuff that humans can do. And the other aspect is that, yes, automation will not take our jobs, will not take everything that we do in a job, but it will take repetitive tasks. The problem here is that most of the jobs affected by automation is low-end jobs. And actually, this is where we have to intervene, and at least this is what we are doing in the field. We are trying to do digital education so that we can prepare everyone for automation. Automation will come, like Vladimir said, it will come. There's no way about it. One of the things that we're doing besides going into schools and teaching digital education is what you see behind me. We are starting today an Agritech Camp. It's a camp about automation in agriculture, and we do this for high schoolers from agricultural high schools. So basically, we are trying to prepare everyone in different fields for what's coming. This is very important to understand that while, like I said, automation cannot take fully our jobs, we need to take care of the less advantage of us who don't have access to all this technology. I believe in more developed states. This won't be a major problem, but for example, Romania or other countries that are still in development or underdeveloped, it will be a problem, and we need to somehow address this while working on other issues.
Yeah, I would thank you. I would go to Aurore now because we talked and we're talking a lot about technology and people, and you work with technology and people, and I'm not sure if you can hear us, but my question to you, coming from what Vladimir said and Ana Maria, is how can we better support organizations that perhaps are not that inclined to use technology, but eventually all organizations will need to use technology. So how can we, boost digital and tech literacy, if you like, to organizations, be it companies, city halls, governments? It doesn't really matter which one. I think you're muted, so I would ask my colleagues to unmute. 1 second.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I was about to say this is nothing new. Basically, we're at our fourth industrial revolution, and each revolution we have exactly the same problem, the same fears, and each revolution go and another one come afterwards. So I really believe that we need to give use cases to the people, to teach them, to reassure them that those industrial revolution are actually beneficial to society. For instance, the first one brought to us a lot of medicine, for instance, aspirin. The second one brought to us a technological agriculture. As you were saying, so to reassure people. And the second stage, and I will follow what Ana Maria was saying, is that we need, as a society, not just companies, to try to teach children and teach most specifically women and marginalized community STEM, science and technology studies. And to do that, we need to really goes into a cultural shift that's not just meant by companies, but give grants basically to schools to enroll students that are less advantaged and can't actually access that kind of education. We need to have companies actually mentor those students. So yeah, raise awareness, because automation is not just something that is bound to happen. This is something that has been happening for quite, and we are always on the same discussion about how it might impact the jobs, basically. But that's not the problem. The problem is not technology.
Yeah.
Technology is neutral, so it could be positive or negative. So we need to really reassure people by proof, basically, by showing proof that that a lot of use cases are positive and are actually improving people's lives.
Yeah. I have a follow-up question to you, but a follow-up question to Vladimir as well, which is about cost.
Yeah.
Organizations, when looking at technology, they automatically think, or most think, oh, it's too expensive for us. How can automation be democratized, or how can more people, organizations, companies benefit with, even if they're, as we were talking about, less privileged, let's say?
In order to drive adoption of technology within any company, first you have to educate those people that will take advantage of that automation or that new fourth industrial revolution technology that will be disrupting. So I think it all starts with access to education. Us as a company and a lot of other tech companies provide free education and free software licenses, mentoring, and different learning platforms for any individual to upskill himself. Because the first step is to have to be a bit mindful about automation and the new industrial revolution. Then you have to get yourself educated to see how you can generate use cases, how it was one of my colleagues was saying earlier, with whom you can empathize and understand how you can replicate or even do better. And then create these communities of automation or AI enthusiasts within your organization, whether it's a school or a company, that you can pilot at no cost, because there are free software licenses in this world and education in different platforms. But then, as you said, then there's the cost of implementation. How we convince companies to adopt our technologies to show the return on investment they have, how people will be more productive, or how they will reduce cost caused by human error. And apart from the, automating repetitive work, there is also the innovative part that can bring more revenues and more productivity on the long run for this institution.
Yeah. You talked about automation and AI, and we have two Ana Marias in the meeting, and I would go to you, Ana Maria, with a question more related to AI. Just if you could tell the public in 1-2 minutes what is the network that you're coordinating doing, and then following on that, how do you see the best way to bring more technology to more organizations across the world?
And I am the deputy coordinator of a network called Lund, that gathers academics like myself, but also decision makers in the public sector, as well as private enterprises. All of us united in our interest for artificial intelligence. So what we do is exactly this: educate both our own students at Lund University, but also executive education towards the in public sector that have an interest in introducing artificial intelligence or automated processes in their own work. So we educate at all levels. We also partner with companies, maybe some of you guys as well present in the digital room, do their own research, right? So not only do we try to collaborate in an educational way, but also research-wise. So we pair PhD students with companies. We have these kind of embedded programs in which one can get a PhD by doing research that is applied to a specific company's need, for example. And we can also invite researchers at private companies or in the public sector to collaborate with experts that we have in the academic environment to produce innovation, as it was mentioned before. So that's kind of what AI Lund is doing, and it's been recognized as one of the areas of strategic importance for the region of Sweden where I'm based, in southern Sweden. And we have recently received several new grants to empower us to continue our activities and even further develop them in collaborative ways. So I'm pretty confident that, as again my colleagues mentioned before, this type of technical development is the future. It's unavoidable because, again, there's lots and lots of benefits as outlined by all of you. However, as the academic, I also feel the need to say that it's not as easy as that because of all sorts of risks and pitfalls. Not only the mental image resistance that has been already described by previous speakers, or this inertia that exists in many institutions, in particular in the public sector, one could say, but also because there is a lack of knowledge about what this actually means. And to this, I can bring maybe a little bit of an example. A researcher that works with Swedish enterprises has done a national survey of top managers and middle managers across a variety of industries in Sweden. And whereas the top managers were very, very optimistic about introducing artificial intelligence in their company, middle managers and low-level managers were very, very skeptical because they perceived they did not know what is expected of them to actually implement. Whereas the top management, again, maybe this sounds familiar to some of you, perceived, let's call it the marketing value or the advertisement value of saying this is an AI powered department, or we use robots. Again, my colleague working with my other Anna Maria working with robots would also say, is it really a robot that you're using, right? It's not Terminator, but it's looking like futuristic and exciting, and people are kind of curious and use this as a shortcut to present themselves as modern, to present themselves as up to date, without really knowing what it really means, what automation means, what does it imply for them, and what kind of background needs to be in place, in particular in terms of data quality and skills, to make this automation, especially if we
Yeah.
have the autonomous layer, autonomous systems layers introduced as well, to work well for that company, right?
So,
So
so this leads me to a question about auditing, believe it or not. So, when you talk about technology, some companies and organizations might say, you know what, I'm going to use AI because it sounds good and I heard it makes money. Or I'm going to use a VR or etc. So what would you recommend to companies, and this is for both Ana Marias now, what would you recommend to companies to do in order to really understand, almost like an audit of what technology is the best one for me? What should I use? Should I use AI? Should I use AI and automation? Should I just not use that, etc.? So let's go to any of you, Ana Marias, and
whichever,
let's
I
pick
can
up
I
on
can
that.
go first very quickly from the more theoretical perspective, perhaps, and then we can have a more practitioner's point of view. I think there are two things that I are very clearly outlined in the academic research on this. The one is exactly as you said, an inventory of needs. Is AI really needed here? Or in my case, AI, but automation can be seen as a subsection of this. Is AI really needed, or can I solve my problem with something more basic? Do I need to make a huge investment for solving this particular issue? So that's probably step one. And then step two, if the answer to the first question was yes, is what make an inventory, I would say an overview of something that is very, very important, which is data. What type of data does the company have in order to provide enough quality substance to automate anything? Because if there is no data, the most ambitious CEO, the most ambitious visionary cannot really make it work as soon as possible. So everything kind of has to go back to the data, and the first step would be an inventory of data in the company if one decision is to go for the automation. There's more to say, but I stop here.
Thank you. Anna Maria?
Just a sec, finishing up my thoughts. I will try to talk as fast as I can. Actually, we are preparing, I hope that in September we can present, we are preparing a course for enterprises on AI and machine learning, but for people from companies. In which we can explain in normal words, let's say, not technical words, how everything works. Because sometimes you have leaders who don't understand a lot about AI and machine learning and how it works. And usually they take the word of the persons from the technical department, while the person from the technical department doesn't know very well the business side of it. That's why the leader needs to understand how things works. And one thing that we are doing is now we found a really nice platform in which you can do machine learning with low code. Basically something like UiPath, but for machine learning. And now we are trying to do a course for it, just for them to get an idea of what we are talking about. I have to say that I'm a firm believer in low code. I think this is the potential for everyone to use technology, and it's actually what I think it can help us from the social problem that we can get from automation. I am a huge fan of UiPath, and I'm not just saying this because they are here, but because it's low code, and they are the only who offer this for free so that you can learn. It is very important. My dream, and I'm working on it in Romania, is to have UiPath classes in schools and high schools. I believe
Okay,
very
I think this requires a fast reaction from
Yeah.
Vladimir, and then we're gonna
I'll,
go.
I'll be
Uh,
brief. I don't want to play the corporate guy who's bragging about his company, but we work with
I just
universities
bragged
in.
you.
Okay, thank you. Did my job a bit. So we work with universities, workforce development organizations, and not-for-profits who focus on skilling all over the world. And what we've seen is that our first challenge was to educate professors that they need to pick up a new technology, basically, and teach it to their students. Because unfortunately, outside the industry, and the corporate world, automation is quite, especially robotic process automation, one of the technologies that we do, is quite a stranger to academia. So first we equip educators with automation skills, and as one of our colleagues were saying earlier from Lund, students along with the educators and the industry research together automation use cases. And we're very proud to see how professors are trying to and starting to write books on automation. For example, in Sweden, there is a 600 pages book written by a professor along with 10 students on how automation is impacting the public sector. And this is back to our initial comments that automation is bringing people together, because the origins of this book was a course in which the professor brought public sector employees to talk with the students, to tell them what are their pain points and how they need help to automate some of the tasks, which resulted in a very fruitful relationship between students, academics, and the public sector, which is something that we want to replicate in other countries as well.
um, a follow-up question on that, but I'm going to go to Aurore because I remember I read an interview, and recently you talked about virtual environments, more like a place for communities to develop, not just for a place for people to work. I'm not sure if you can hear me, but the question is, how do you connect organizations that are away from technology to technology by using what we all live in now, which is basically, various Zooms and other types of platforms that allow us to talk to each other. But I mean, can we create digital communities actually?
Yes, totally. So we've been at L'Atelier BNP Paribas, we're a research team, basically. And what we did is research what everybody's calling the meta, but basically gaming environment and blockchain environment where people are actually meeting online. And since the pandemic, we've seen that really exploding, even though the technology was actually there before. And we've seen that people were all stuck behind their screens because of lockdowns, and we all needed to keep working, basically, keep socialized. So we went to those virtual environments that some call metaverse, some don't call metaverse. But for instance, we've seen big trends in environments such as Animal Crossing or Fortnite, people that really wanted to reach out to other people. And we've seen also big companies, and I'm thinking, we're talking about automation, and I think there's one use case really interesting, which is NVIDIA, which is a processor unit manufacturer. And they created what they call Omniverse, which is a metaverse virtual environment for designers and engineers. So basically, what they created is a one tool with the exact same tools as Zoom, as any instant messaging, but for creators. Basically, people from all over the world could actually go to that platform and create, I don't know, the next car that they will manufacture, or the next city that they will, the next sustainable city processes that we can find. So basically, we've seen that trend boom, and right now, every companies are currently testing, and I believe that's really beautiful and really interesting in the sense that right now we're seeing people converging with those technologies that are actually accessible through mobile, not even a laptop. And that's really interesting too. And they are trying to socialize and trying to work together. And this so that there is no geographical barriers. You can actually ask someone from all over the world to collaborate with you. Some companies that have been spread all over the world can actually have teams working together, and that's beautiful, you know. And basically, what we automatize is a social place for people to work together, and that's really interesting for companies.
Yeah. Um, we're getting close to the end of this session. We have a second session that is about to start in about 10 minutes on the role of automation and AI in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. One of the first things I heard about automation, Vladimir, a couple of years ago from one of your colleagues, former colleagues actually. Okay. He told me that this technology can offer people more time. And I would like to ask you, do you see that happening, first of all? And second of all, if we have more time, aren't we automatically going to work more instead of using that time for something else?
Well, I think this automation first, it takes a bit of time to learn. But when that learning is done, the tasks that you automate can free you up. And now it depends on the humans what they do with this free time. Whether they want to do something innovative, or they just want to hang out, or they just want to fake that they're working. So the will is with us. It depends on each individual how he or she sees this opportunity ahead. And what we've seen from students, for example, because in my role I work closely with them, is they become more creative, and they become more open to collaborate, and they become more open to do things differently, which develops a very so critical thinking, growth mindset, and increases their employability. With the existing workforce, I think things are a bit more challenging because people are used to mark some hours of the day, and when then those hours are freed up, they might be a bit reluctant to do other things. But this is where the companies can support them with, to give them a lot of trust in themselves that us as humans, if we put our minds to something creative, we can achieve great things. I don't think there is a universal answer. I think it depends on each of us how responsible and future thinking we are. But we are quite optimistic.
How do you see the next, how far in time can you go? 5 years, 10 years, 50 years?
Well, companies, tech companies, publicly listed, work in quarters, but no, that's a joke for that time. But we are preparing the world for the tens of years ahead to automate things and become creative more and more and disrupt the world as we know it. We're quite surprised of the adoption of RPA and automation in general. But we're getting surprised. So I think every year we are rebuilding our strategy and adapting to the new world that happens.
Yeah. So we have here with us in the virtual room people from, from Sweden, France to, I just returned from Brussels yesterday, Romania. We all live in a variety of geographies, right? So I have a question to the three panelists that are online with us, which is about the challenges that you see organizations are actually facing in the next year. Let's just go, we usually talk about the next 10, 20, but let's focus a bit just once. And I would take a 1 or 2 minute answer from each of you. How do you see in your country, for example, or in Europe, organizations in the next year, having in view the context in which we are, of course, various crises around us, and is technology an answer to these challenges? So let's start with Anna Maria, one of you. Let's go to Sweden, maybe?
This. I think in Sweden, the country is well positioned to meet the digitalization challenges. Also, because the government, regardless of the political color of the governments have been very active in pushing this agenda for almost 8 years now. So there's been a influx of visibility, but also of financial support for both private and public sector automatization and education in this field. So the terrain is well laid for this ground. As you already have mentioned, there's a lot of literature and a lot of testing ground on this in the country as a whole. The challenge, though, as I see it, is whether this will be equally valid for public sector and private sector, and within the private sector, if smaller versus larger companies are equally agile in adapting and adopting these technologies. Maybe contrary to the expectation of mainstream people, it is the smaller companies that tend to be more interested in automation because even though it is a higher cost at the beginning, the return on investment is much higher and much quicker. Whereas bigger organizations are more prone to inertia, and so there's a lot of struggles to implement innovations. And this is my final remark in terms of the challenges and where I see the next year, 1 or 2 years to be something to surmount. And it's the issue of inertia in structural change. I think this is probably what research points as the most difficult to overcome, even though people are presented with very clear information, data that shows the improvements, both in terms of all the aspects you guys already discussed. There is a reluctance to engage, a little bit of fear of the unknown, and also a difficulty for larger organizations to adapt their inner workings, their inner procedures, the relationship between different departments to accommodate automation and artificial intelligence. Because obviously, you guys already know it, but I'm saying for the record, it's not just the IT sector. In a sense, the IT department is the least interesting when it comes to talking to and bringing out this automation. They're already in. They already like it. They already support it. They work for it. It's the question how you can take some of that knowledge and some of that tech optimism and transfer it into the departments that typically don't work with it, like finance, right? So I think this is what I see as a dilemma. But I think that the pandemic and the various crises we face have provided us with an impetus in the direction of more automation and more friendliness towards artificial intelligence.
I really like that tech optimism comment at the end, and I'm going to the other Anna Maria. She's an optimist by nature. For those of you that don't know her, but I would ask her to see if she can find the optimism in the challenge for SMEs and medium companies in Eastern Europe this time, and their relation to technology. So optimist or less optimist for the next 12 months?
Uh, Actually, I am pragmatic. I like to consider myself pragmatic. I can see the downside. I don't know if all our viewers know, but in the DESI index, Romania is fighting for the last place together with Bulgaria, and it's been so for the last years. Of course, we are trying to do everything that we can so that we can change this, but it is a challenge. The biggest challenge that I see is the adoption. And I can see it from my work in hospitals. During the COVID pandemics, we were distributing robots for disinfection. And I can tell you that the managers wanted to buy the robots so that they can disinfect areas in hospital, but the response of the staff and the rate of adoption was not very optimistic, let's say. And this also happens for software. I saw in many companies they think of let's do an app because everybody now is doing an application with AI. But not all of the clients and not all of the employees are happy about this because they need to change their way of work. Plus, this is not being done in an agile manner in which the people also get consulted. The people that will work with that particular app are not consulted from the beginning and are not involved. So their attitude is not very open to something like this. I believe it will take some time, but we're getting there. And I would there was a meme during the COVID pandemics, a questionnaire that done to companies. What was the biggest drive to include innovation in your company? And of course, the answer was COVID-19 pandemics, because it made all of us go to innovation. Even the Romanian government accelerated the digitalization during this period.
Yeah, I think some of us remember that, and I think this is valid across geographies. I would go to France and to a large extent Western Europe now with Aurore. You work with a variety of entities, private entities in particular. How do you see, or what is the one big challenge related to technology that organizations face in your perspective?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I've got a transition for you for the next panel. I think sustainability, that's the biggest blocker right now, because it's a trend, and finding, we have people that are already not ready to go to automation, and we in the next 12 months, I'll see a lot more people also questioning automation based on finding the right balance between technology and sustainability inside companies. And we're seeing a lot of investments in Europe on that, a lot of investment in France in that topic. So I really believe that that will be a big challenge for companies to just show that they are actually doing automation responsibly, and they're trying to not just for good in social impact, but trying to do that for the earth, basically.
Thank you. So to transition fully, I'm going to ask Vladimir for one final minute on sustainable automation. It's not necessarily your main topic, but how do you see, the use of technology? How can it grow in a sustainable manner that doesn't actually do any harm to people in the end?
Well, when I look at sustainability, I am a bit biased. I think about education back. So all these tasks that are getting automated because of technology will generate at some point fewer jobs, as we know it right now. But this brings a responsibility of the industry to upskill or reskill the existing workforce. And this is how I see the main sustainability strategy, to focus more and more on skills and shift from a life as we know it right now. You study, you work, and then you retire. And we can shift from a continuous education throughout our lives, because technology will continue to change the world as we know it, and we have to be up to date. So to sum up in one word, education.
Well, a sustainable technology is obviously related to education. We're moving slowly towards the second panel. Thank you so much to Anna Maria, Aurore, and Vladimir for taking the time. Thanks a lot for joining us. And we take a couple of seconds now. And in the meantime, you will yes, we're switching to the second panel. Thank you all so much for joining us. And we're moving towards a special and a favorite topic of mine, which is sustainability and the Sustainable Development Goals. The SDGs, we do talk a lot about the SDGs, and in itself, they're not challenges, as some might put them, but they're ambitions, they're goals, and they're ways in which we can see what are the challenges of tomorrow in a small country like Romania, or in a big country like Australia or the US, and how can technology really play a role in that. So I think the speakers are getting online slowly. I would be very happy to invite Margareta on stage. Yeah. Join me here. Thank you. Welcome. Hello to our digital, phygital. I'm sorry. This is a phygital studio. So in case you don't know what a phygital studio is, that is one in which the physical part and the digital part unite. Now, we've been talking a lot about sustainability, and whilst the other speakers are joining us, and I really liked some of the things that were mentioned, especially that tech optimism and sustainable technology and sustainable automation in the end. So I will start with you and a question, if you like, but an invitation to explore in 2-3 minutes. How do you see sustainable technology in the end, and how can we bring more of this into a world which sometimes has little to no technology, which is, the impact world, the NGO world, etc.
Absolutely, and thank you so much. It's great to be here in this fidget environment.
The digital environment. So again, if you're joining us now, we're here with Margareta Kesaro-Mucibovic. She's Director for Public Affairs with UiPath, and we are talking about SDGs and automation. So how can we bring more sustainable technology to the world?
I think there are two approaches to what you were saying. It's one, how do you develop technology in a sustainable way? So with the sustainability by design principle. And the second one is, what for are you using the technology so that you create sustainable outcomes? In talking about the latter, thinking about the UN SDGs that you can contribute to as technology providers, as a part of the ecosystem, it's really not, I think, about finding a solution to all the UN SDGs, trying to be too holistical at the same time. I think this is quite challenging, and it can be disappointing. So I think the essence here is to figure out what are those challenges that you can tackle with the kind of technology that you can that you are developing, and then making sure that you're also intentional and researching, exploring, collaborating with other stakeholders to find the right solutions.
Yeah, and the report that we are sort of pre-launched now, and you can read the full report in the coming months on how automation and AI support and boost the impact that we all have in the end. There are many topics that we tackled. Of course, there's work or decent work, if you were to look at that SDG. But we also looked at issues that, in theory, appear to have nothing to do with impact, which is construction. which is production, right? How do you look at what you do at UiPath at issues related to cities, production, and so on, and how can that technology or those technologies have a social impact on you?
No, that's a great question. And part of this thinking has also motivated us to work on this Automation for Good initiative as part of UiPath, where we are committed to researching, developing, working with partners and customers, and trying to identify, as I was saying earlier, what are those challenges related to social impact and sustainability that we can help tackle, and what are the solutions for that. And at this current stage, we have mapped a few areas that we believe our technology and our community is fit to best address these. One of them being health and well-being. The second one focusing on environment and sustainability. And the third one is social impact. And the conversation about social impact can be a bit broader. So it's not only about the use cases that you develop using automation solutions and technologies, it's also about how you implement this technology so that you create sustainable outcomes and that you are close to your people, you have a people-focused, a people-centric culture, and you're very transparent in everything that you do in terms of technology adoption. But going back to what you said, right now it's also probably a matter of the verticals, right, that you are looking at. What are the industries where you can deploy this kind of automation for good solution? And I think it has to do with the specifics of each customer and each industry so that you can best address them. For example, let's say you are in manufacturing. Maybe something that is very specific to your processes has nothing to do with something that's happening in health and well-being. But having the experts, both knowing your industry, the sustainability experts and the automation experts, can actually facilitate this kind of innovation so that you find exactly the solutions that you need for.
Yeah, you talked about intentional technology, let's say, and I'm very happy to welcome our two speakers, Andre Pietri and Ricardo Vinosa. I'm going to start with Andre. He's a Jedi. For those of you that are not familiar, he's one of the many Jedis that Europe is pushing in becoming, also more sustainable, but also competitive on a global level. JEDI, the Joint European Disruptive Initiative. Margareta was talking about intentional technology, and what JEDI does, to my knowledge, is intentional solutions. So I would ask you, how do you see the relation between technology and SDGs, of course, but overall, progress or sustainable progress? So welcome to the digital, as I was telling you earlier, panel, Andre. So what's your take on this?
Yeah, thank you. And I really enjoyed the conversation just now. Look, I mean, for our audience, what we do, we launch grand challenges on topics, moonshots, on topics which are too risky or too long-term for the private sector. And so we base our inspiration at JEDI on the US entity called DARPA. But the way we do it is precisely the topic of this panel, is to say, what are the big societal challenges? And we know what they are. They are the 17 SDGs, but we summed it up to environment, healthcare, human-centric digital, oceans, education. And inside that, we try to identify what are the scientific and technological bottlenecks, which could be huge game changers. And so this is how we think it's also a European approach of saying, okay, how can we push a society to actually embrace science and technology, because it should not be tech for tech, which we sometimes see, or technology for, let's say, political or authoritarian purposes. So that's the whole. So the force is definitely hopefully positive with us. One point I heard earlier in the discussion, I kind of slightly disagree with the fact that technology is neutral. I think, at the contrary, we realize today that technology is central to our societies. That's the way public opinions are formed. That's the way human groupings are physically brought together. That's obviously how healthcare or privacy or education or equality topics are also tackled. And so the fact that you're either sustainable or private by design is something very, very, very important. It's not just a question of how you apply the technology. That's why we also think, and to finish on that there's no sense of being defensive. We need to be in the proactive way, because otherwise other people and other value systems will shape the world of the future. We want to shape the world and have a positive impact on it.
Yeah, I was just returned from Brussels Forum, and I met with David Van Wil, who's the Assistant Secretary General of NATO. I know Andrea used to work for the Ministry of Defense in France, and he talked a lot about how technology from NATO level, including SDGs, so it's not just about a defense against various threats, military threats, but also about climate. And one of the key elements of the new strategic vision of NATO, and of course, or in particular EU and the US, is related to how technology can play a role for solutions on climate. It is, maybe it's not always neutral, especially when you talk about a defense or offense. Now, I'm super excited to welcome on stage Professor Ricardo Vinosa. We read a lot about automation and sustainability and many of the things he writes. There's a recent paper called The Role of AI in Achieving the SDGs. You analyzed various instances. What do you think the role of AI and automation is, and what is a role that it cannot have yet, or maybe too much pressure is put on technology when we talk about SDGs?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me well?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation. I'm very happy to be part of this very interesting event. In this article that you mentioned, it's published a couple of years ago in Nature Communications, we analyzed the 169 targets of the SDGs of the United Nations, and we evaluated whether artificial intelligence can be an enabler or an inhibitor of each of those targets. So what we found first, and this was through expert elicitation, so we had a wide range of experts in machine learning, but also on technology, on the environment, on the economy, on ethics. So we really tried to cover a very wide range of topics in this team of experts. And we found that 79% of the targets can be positively affected by AI, which is promising. I mean, particularly in the context of the environment and the society, there is quite some promise to be able to be benefiting from AI, and only 35% of the targets can be negatively affected by the development of AI. And this is because there are sometimes unintended negative consequences, or a certain application that you try to improve something is really having side effects on many other areas. Now, having said this, the message seems to be positive overall. There is more positive than negative potential, but one should not underestimate the negatives. I mean, only one target out of 169 being very negatively affected by the technology could really overwhelm and could really counteract all the positive that has been achieved on the other side. So one has to be taking these results with a global perspective, not only thinking, okay, we should just focus on the positives, we should try to make sure that we look at this holistically so we can really benefit from all the good. The main positive result of AI, maybe not surprisingly, is through new technologies or new possibilities within existing technologies. So you can, for example, use satellite data analyzed with deep learning to be able to track poverty. for example, and then that allows you to tackle all the targets within SDG 1. But many of the negative effects of AI are associated with the fact that they exacerbate the existing differences. So differences and inequalities that could be really, well, if the future is going to heavily rely on this technology, and not everybody has the same access to data centers, to HPC, to simulation data to be able to produce good data-driven models, then clearly we're going to even increase the existing inequalities. So those are kind of like the main points. And perhaps the biggest limitation that we have at the moment when using AI for sustainability is that we are not considering the perspective of the sustainability of the AI technology itself. We are using these very large HPC centers to train the models. In many companies, actually, this training process is done perhaps in a bit of a naive way, trying to have more data, bigger models, and consuming more resources, having a huge electrical consumption and a huge environmental impact without really being aware of how much it really costs and what are the negative consequences of this. So perhaps nowadays, if we have to focus on the biggest limitation of the approach to AI, is on really understanding the economical and environmental impacts of AI, so the sustainability of AI, before maybe going to AI for sustainability in a way.
Yeah, I have a short follow-up question to Andre on that, and taking all the all the tech that we just heard. You do these grand challenges at European level to you work with some of the biggest and brightest students, but I wanted to say scientists, etc., and business leaders. If you look in the next years at European level, what do you think is the biggest and the most important role that Europe can play in technologies for SDGs in the end?
I think what is very important is that we refocus our research on what is called purpose. That means we do a lot of technology breaks, but we need to actually make the connection between science and society. So I give you an example. The European Union just decided yesterday that they will ban thermal engines to be sold cars in 2035. But to build electric motors, you need rare earths, you need permanent magnets, and you also need lithium, which, if we see the trend, will need 50 times, not 50%, 50 times more lithium. So these are topics where we will launch challenges on saying, can we, for example, reduce the cost of recycling lithium by a factor of 3 to make it much more interesting to recycle rather than to mine it? Can we do electric engines without these permanent magnets that are sourced 98% in China? If we think we are dependent on Russian gas, welcome to rare earths coming from China. And this is something where not only you achieve breakthroughs, you remain completely open to the way to do it. So you don't overprescribe, you give opportunity for the best researchers, deep tech startups, but also teams coming from industry. I think not only startups have the solution, we need just to focus on excellence. You trust people. I think it's really a political way of doing it, because when you over prescribe the way research and technology needs to go, you're actually showing that you don't trust a lot the researchers. And I think our point of view at JEDI is that we bureaucratized a lot of our research programs. We need to give this freedom and in exchange be much more demanding. And with that, we solve the big societal challenges. We solve part of the SDGs. Not everything will be solved with science and technology. And on top of that, you make science advance. And think about AI. So many topics can be done. I mean, can you use AIs to develop new batteries? IBM is doing that. The Europeans should do that. Can we use AI, my colleague just mentioned on space observation, to link agriculture and the Green Deal policy to track real time how much this or this crop captures carbon? Today, we don't know. It will be AI, it will be part hyperspectral, it will be probably IoT with sensors. Can we use AI to modelize plasma for nuclear fusion? Yes, this is a bit science fiction, But actually, when you look at some things happening in nuclear fusion, it's not that far away. So this is ways where we can also solve, there's a lot of debate currently in Europe on nuclear. We too much focus on the battles of the past, the traditional nuclear reactors, and it's very ideological. We need to use this technology to also win the battles, the societal battles of tomorrow. That makes us very, very optimistic.
Yeah, I know you will need to run in a couple of minutes, so I have a sort of a question to you and a question to Margareta in the same time, which is how do you think an initiative like JEDI, which is very laudable at European level, can better work with large companies like UiPath and many others, and SMEs, etc., of course, to actually create a thriving tech environment at European level so that we're not the third or fourth or fifth in various types of technologies.
Do you want me to start, or? I'm happy. I'm happy to start with that. Look, first, I think we don't miss the raw material. I talked about raw material before, and we have incredible people in Europe. When you look at the number of DARPA challenges, be it autonomous driving or voice recognition with AI, Siri, these were French, German, Romanian scientists who won them, but they won them in an environment where they have probably much more freedom. And so this is what we need to that is what we need to create at the European level. And secondly, we need to ask the right questions. And this is linked with anticipation, and that's where large companies are essential, because we need people who are not just focused on one topic, which often when you're a startup, you need to be razor sharp on one topic. This is the advantage of large organizations. And we've seen, I mean, look at the pandemic or look at Ukraine. What we need in the world of today, we need long-term thinking and a lot of agility to be able to react. Because if you try to everything is a moving target. We live in an exponential time. Too often, we feel that Europe is reactive. That means too short-term oriented. I mean, we are just discovering the Russian gas issue, or we will discover the lithium issue, but we are not very good long-term, and not very agile on a short term. So we need to change that, because otherwise the risk is that authoritarian states will have an advantage, especially on the long-term thinking. And the last point is, again, we need to use our democratic societies to make the full use of this diversity, which allows us to be better at anticipation, to be better at being very open to breakthroughs wherever they come from. To this topic of interdisciplinarity is a topic that is often discussed as a bit of buzzword like deep tech, but the true breakthroughs somebody mentioned NVIDIA just before. Is NVIDIA a software or hardware company? Is Tesla an automotive or a company or a software platform? We feel the real breakthroughs will come at the intersection of different disciplines. And so we need to get these startups, companies, research, but also molecular biology, chemistry, and electronics coming together.
I will go to Margareta, and thank you, Andre, for joining us. If you have to leave,
no, I can join. I just will be probably a little bit moving, but I'm happy to continue.
Lovely. Anticipation. UiPath and other companies, but in particular you, are at the forefront of the future. You are literally there because you work with literally almost all industries and public services. But I would look at you work with from NASA to, I don't know, the city hall of whatever high-tech city, biotech, etc. How can we anticipate better, and how can we prepare better? So anticipate the bad, but also the good or the opportunity.
In terms of identifying solutions for societal challenges, I guess.
Yeah.
So I think a key concept here that has to become a reality is actual collaboration. And us alone, we cannot identify these solutions by our own, right? We need to collaborate either with our customers, with partners, with educational institutions, with our community, to make sure that what we produce is relevant and high quality and best in class. And my colleague Vladimir was earlier with us today. I think this is again one of the key areas in which we can contribute and also be active in a conversation through partnerships with educational institutions, universities, workforce organizations, nonprofits, exchanging ideas and facilitating this exchange of knowledge. I think it's critical because for this kind of work to happen, you need to have commitments. You need to have commitments from various stakeholders. It's not a journey that you can go on your own and expect, to get where you want to. And obviously this raises some challenges in terms of it's not happening as fast. It's not maybe as accessible for everyone. Not everyone understands the value added. So awareness and research, I think, is key to make sure that businesses and other participants to the economy understand the potential of technology to do good, because we can get sidelined in this traditional way of thinking of productivity and efficiency and cost reduction, but that is no longer enough for what our society needs from us, from the current generations, from their expectations from us. So we need to make sure that we are addressing them so that we have a sustainable future and one that works for everyone.
Yeah, you mentioned everyone, and inclusive technological access, or the tech gap on the other side, is definitely one of the biggest things that we all need to work at, because otherwise, even from a very practical perspective, we will not have employees, we will not have productivity, we will not have purchasing power, and many other challenges. I would go to our head researcher in SDGs and automation, to Ricardo, and there's a lot of research on the market on what is the impact of technologies like AI and automation, and there is a lot of speculation on how these could evolve. Coming to Andre's point about anticipation, and to your research, not just this, but others, also this one, with Francesco Nerini. I know scientists don't really like to make assumptions about the future, but if you were to make one on the role of AI and automation in the next 5 to 8 years, let's say until 2030, what would those be? What are the key things that you are looking for forward?
Yeah, I think a quite exciting area in the context of AI for many applications is this generalist agents that are able to do not only one task for which the agent or the algorithm has been trained, but to do progressively wider and wider range of tasks. One example of this is this Gato algorithm recently published by Google DeepMind, where leveraging the power of these large language process models, they're actually able to do a quite impressive range of tasks reasonably well. Not as well as the models trained for a particular task, but they can do more and more things. And I think that sort of approach of being able to do different things is a type of synergy that we need in order to have AI models that can really help. Some of the work that we are doing as well, extending this article that you mentioned, is trying to use AI algorithms to make policy decisions, to try to look a bit farther than the short-term goals and then the small connections between this SDG and SDG, and try to have a holistic view, try to have a big approach on synergies and trade-offs, and having that information, developing algorithms and agents that can look at the big picture in a way and develop more robust policy decisions. So I think one exciting direction is that one, where we are actually able to have models that are more general. They can do more things, and things that go beyond the training scenarios. But perhaps a key to get there, or two keys to get there, are the following. The first one is the consumption. If we look at forecasts in the next 10 years, it is predicted that we will go from around 2% of the total electricity consumption in simulations and communication technologies to something like 20 or 30% of the total. So the growth predicted in terms of consumption of electricity is quite scary if you think about it. And that will really require to change the way we think about developing models and change the perspective on not just having larger models, but being aware of the consumption and being aware of the cost. The other thing that we need to change is, and it was also mentioned before in the context of regulations and also in the context of the social engagement, is the hype that is happening around artificial intelligence, data-driven methods, machine learning. That doesn't help at all the research. It doesn't really help an adequate development of the technologies and the capabilities. We have been a bit annoyed in the machine learning community in the past weeks with this Lambda model and the media discussions of this sentient AI and things like that. I mean, that's all pointless conversations. That's not the case, and that's not the right direction to really steer research in a productive way. So one should focus on the important things, probably not get diverted into the media and the hype and the kind of unrealistic statements that are being made about the artificial intelligence, and focus a bit more on the actual capabilities and the proper regulatory frameworks that one should have for achieving those goals. One of the, perhaps the last point that I want to make, one of the last conclusions that we have also in our article is the fact that the regulations are lagging behind the development of technology and the adoption of the users, which is a quite clear observation that we are all experiencing. But these regulations should not be made in a way that we are constraining the technology, and that we should have knowledge in the bodies and in the organizations that are developing the regulation. If there is no knowledge about what the technology can and cannot do, any regulation is going to be counterproductive, and it's really going to achieve very little or nothing. Right? So I think that's a little bit what we can get to, but there are some important changes to be made at the moment in order to be able to harness all the positive potential that we have.
I take two things from what you said. There's a huge spike in energy consumption that we need, and it's not just that we need, we will have it. And second of all, how can regulation not beat innovation? Marga, there's a lot in what you do, and other companies, of course, in policy and city management and many others, healthcare, etc. What are some things that automation and AI have done in the past years that you think are really going to change the world, or have the potential in the next 10 years?
So I'm going to share some examples that I think are more humble than targeting necessarily changing the world for the better, I hope. But I just wanted to share a few examples just to maybe raise awareness on the fact that technology can help us go on this sustainability path, even with the not necessarily very abstract objectives. We can incorporate automation in our work and to help us embrace more conscious behaviors when we talk about environment. And one of the examples, since it was discussed already, the energy consumption. Sometimes, I think it's valid for many of us, we're not aware of how much energy we consume. We don't have this kind of data visible so that we're able to track it and measure it and benchmark our behavior. What if you can automate this kind of process and make sure that the energy consumption is visible for you, so that you lower and adjust your levels based on informed metrics in real time? So you can extract this kind of data from your energy bills, you can think about other sources that you need to automate from, and have this kind of dashboard so that you are aware, which makes you more responsible. That's just a very basic example.
And when you know that you could consume less,
Yes.
you could pay less, and therefore it's not just about responsibility for the future, but it's also responsibility for your pocket.
True. And if you combine that individual, behavior and awareness and, scale it within the entire enterprise, you make the whole company aware. And we all know that ESG is a key topic for CEOs right now. I think it's top 5 priority on the CEO agenda, according to McKinsey. Again, it might be a bit abstract for regular employees that are not part of the C-level agenda. So you need to combine, I think, this kind of technology adoption with day-to-day behavior so that you get this kind of connection with sustainability and technology and make it real for people so that they don't expect it's something very different, not connected to them, that's happening somewhere in an offsite or in a building that's tackling sustainability challenges. No, it's their own behavior too. And how they connect with this kind of technology, I think it's also very important.
Yeah, something that was mentioned, I think by Vladimir and others in this session, in the previous session, and we also mentioned it a lot in the report, is that technology in itself is really not enough. We need a behavior change.
Yeah.
Because it's completely useless to use all the tech in the world if we don't change our consumption patterns, if we don't understand how much we can actually use of less, so less energy, less whatever, but also some things that we're not aware of. So it's not just that people, employees, governments are they want to do harm, but they're not aware that what they do is actually harmful for other people, the planet, and
that's why I think getting that sense of the data that is available, try to capture it, to process it, and then, to create visual dashboards. I think it's very, very important, and it's not something that it's, I think, very accessible as we speak. We need to work towards getting this kind of awareness. And maybe just a small comment on the challenge that again businesses face when reporting ESG data and ESG metrics. It's again about data quality and availability. So we also need to build this kind of mindset to begin with.
Yeah, measuring is important. So we have measurement, but also we need to translate. And I have a sort of final question to our speakers. If Andre can hear us, I have a question about how do we translate. So he's not, as I mentioned before. Then to Ricardo, how can we translate better for not just for the general public, for the SMEs and for the employees of the big corporates? How can we better translate the impact that technology has and the fact that we need to also be not just aware, but also more proficient and literate when it comes to tech?
Yeah, I agree with what has been mentioned regarding the awareness of the cost, the economical cost, and also the environmental cost. In other areas, for example, in computer simulations, in high-performance computing, when you get computer time to do a simulation, then you're allowed to use the facilities, but then you get a bill at the end with the economical cost of that simulation that you did, and also with the CO2 footprint of that simulation that you did. Because for you as a user, it's very easy to forget or to not be aware of the real impact. You are with your laptop or with your computers, you press a button, suddenly you have thousands of processors working together, having a huge cost, and you're not aware of it. So having such, it can be done as a as an app that is associated with the models that you're training, which I believe this awareness of the cost is not really as well implemented in the context of AI and data-driven methods. And connecting with what you're mentioning, we are going to have a much larger implementation of these technologies in companies, in a wide range of companies, with possibilities and resources, but also in smaller companies that could really, with some training, have the possibility of making a huge difference in their businesses. So we have to be aware of that, and we have to provide the right context so people know the cost and the environmental cost of the models that they are training. And well, likely there is nowadays quite some content that can be accessed easily online, as at the universities are providing more and more material open access. So anyone can really look at some audiovisual content or some codes that are available online, and people can more easily become familiar with these methods and these technologies to really try to implement them in their problems. Perhaps even more interaction between the academia and the industry would be good, to have more on-site trainings and to really try to develop solutions together that can make such a big difference. Because at the end, and that connects with what I was mentioning before about the inequalities, it is possible to access the high-performance computing centers and the GPU machines that you need to train the models remotely. I mean, even if you are in countries with a more challenged economy, it is possible to access remotely these high-performance computing resources. So to be able to provide everyone with the necessary knowledge to make a difference in their daily lives and to benefit from the possibilities of the technology, that should be a priority. So everyone can really do this. Everyone can really, I mean, to a certain level of knowledge, everyone is literate to some extent in data, in codes, and in what data-driven methods can do in your life, because they will have an impact in our lives in the short term and in the mid-term. So we have to make sure that people are really understanding that impact, and that the possibility of having models that are, for example, interpretable, and that we can know what these models are doing, can be a reality and a possibility. So I would say that the direction should be that, one, we increase awareness on the cost, economical and environmental, and second, we increase the engagement and the interaction so more people are literate and they can really be aware of what these technologies can do, so that they can really make a difference in their businesses and also in their problems and the research that they are conducting.
Sí, muchas gracias, Ricardo.
Gracias.
Tack så mycket. There's Ricardo Vinosa, Associate Professor with the KTH Royal Institute of Technology. Thank you so much. And we will for sure disseminate more of the work that you're doing that is actually helping everyone else translate what technology does and how we can all become more data, tech, and digital literate. So how can we, I'm going to switch to you for a final intervention. There's no magic button. There's no bullet or even gold or silver bullet that can help us become more acquainted with technology and ready to use it. But when you talk about automation and AI, but in particular automation in itself, I mean, I've tried it. I'm really not a tech person. And it's not that difficult once you get it. And you can install your own studio on your laptop. You can automate basic things. And when you understand the value, instead of just talking about technology, using it, be it VR or automation or anyone, you really understand how can we increase that literacy in the end usage.
Absolutely, huge topic, and very, very important, and not an easy one. I think we need to embed this kind of direction also in early education. So I think we need to start early, not necessarily on how we need to develop robots, right, and software robots and other kinds of automations, but just making sure that we put kids in the context of technology. And it's in an interactive way. And once they grow older, things like visits to offices where technology companies operate. I think it's a huge impact because it shows the reality of what it means to work in technology and what kind of technology is being developed. And not only read it in the textbook, right? So we, as UiPath, we are doing these kinds of visits, and it was very interesting to see the kinds of questions that young kids ask us in terms of how the software robots are running on the desktops. How they think, they want to use it too, they want to try it too, and they understand very easily. But you need to get to them first, and this part is a challenge, and not everyone is privileged to have this kind of access. So again, we need to join forces with other stakeholders in trying to make access to education and democratize access to automation more easily. But just another perspective on digital literacy, but also sustainability literacy, I think we are faced with a new challenge. We're thinking about digital skills, basic, advanced, that are important in this new economy and for the digital agenda. But if we want to couple digital skills and digital targets with sustainability ones, we need to make sure that we're not creating skill sets that are in silos. We need to somehow figure out how to bring this knowledge together so that the next software developers, but also regular citizens that want to operate in a business environment have at least the basic knowledge, both on digital skills, but also in terms of sustainability, because you need to couple the thinking in order to trigger innovation in this new reality. At least that's my opinion, and I think it's not an easy one.
Yeah, I think you ended better than I would now. So thank you all for joining us, and I will actually end with a quote from the report, which says, "Ultimately, automation for good is automation for the people," and I dare to push for the planet as well. Thank you so much for hosting us, and to the other speakers and viewers. Don't forget, we're going to launch after the summer break, right? I think we all need a sort of a break. The Automation for Good report, what you can find in it is a series of use cases for a variety of topics, like how we can use automation and AI to have better homes, better food, better energy, better health and education, but also how can we work better, make stuff better, waste better, if you like. Less, until less, we should waste better. And also, how can we create and use better public services. On that note, thank you again to Margareta and UiPath for taking on this challenge of finding what Automation for Good is and how we can all use it, whatever we are and whatever we do in the end. So have a great weekend. The weekend is coming up, and see you all quite soon. Thank you.